Hey there, I'm Rena Dearden, owner and designer at the Rustic Horseshoe. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to apply lock joint armature and a jointed neck to specifically the Sluggish Sloth. However, the same techniques could be applied to other Pudgy Plushie designs, which I think it would look super cute with the koala and work just as well as it does with the sloth. Matter of fact, I think I might go back and make a koala with the armature and jointed neck here sometime soon. We'll see. And it could also work well with other Pudgy Plushies such as the Nutty Nag, Blissful Bovine, or the Elephant, etc. Try it if you'd like. I don't have samples of those to show because I have not done them with them yet. This is the first one I've done it with, and it turned out great and I really love it. So I'm going to walk you through the process of how to apply the armature and the neck joint, and how you have to change the steps of assembly with the Sluggish Sloth, or it would, like I said, apply to the Quirky Koala or any of the others. You would follow the same steps of assembly that differs slightly from what is actually assembled when it doesn't have the armature or the jointed neck. So we'll dive in, I'll show you how to do that, and you can have a fun animated sloth or other animal. Okay, so you should have several things ready at this point, including your arms and legs, but we're going to set those aside. You have your front body panel, and you have your back body panel with the tail. So this is the armature part. If you are only adding a neck joint, you can already have your arms and legs sewn on like is shown in the tutorials. So for armature for the arms and legs, we're going to join the front body panel and the back body panel only with the tail on it, no arms, no legs. And we're going to leave a hole here for the arms at each arm notch. The hole doesn't need to be very large, it just needs to be big enough for your armature to go through it. And I suggest using a 3/8 inch armature. So pin along both sides. And you can double check with your armature and make sure it's going to fit in there. Okay, so now we have it pinned at both sides. So we're going to sew up here, leave the armhole open, sew up here, leave the neck hole open, sew again, leave the armhole open on the other side, sew back down to the corner, and the bottom is going to be open. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you want to double stitch, or back stitch, sorry, at the armholes where you start and stop the stitch to give it extra support and make sure it's going to be strong enough when you're stuffing and moving everything. So you can see we have that open and a back stitched around each stop and start of the stitch to keep it secure. And basically about a finger's width is what you need for the armature. We're going to add the circle for the neck joint in the top of the body here at the neck. And on all the Pudgy Plushies, the front is generally a little bit longer than the back. So with this circle, you're going to make sure that you have the longer part of the circle toward the front and then the shorter part of the circle toward the back. And then line up these side seams or the notches with the side seam on the body. And really it's all very close as far as the front and the back. If you have it flipped around, it'll probably still work just fine. Okay, continue lining the raw edges around the circle and pin in place. It should look something like this. It's a small circle to sew, but the way that you're sewing it, it's not as difficult as sewing other types of circles. So just place the flat part of the circle down on the sewing machine with the body part facing up so you can move the fabric around as you sew around the circle. Just take your time, make sure that you catch all the fabric in the seam, double check your seams, sew over them if you need to. Okay, so now we're going to add the bum. This is done slightly differently than it is in the tutorial because we're going to also leave holes for the legs to put armature through for the legs. So line it up with the front notch of the bum at the front seam on the front body panel, and then line it up with the side seams. You're going to leave the opening in the back for turning, right about there. That's what the back looks like. You have the opening for turning there, and now we're going to look at the leg openings. So again, get your armature, kind of gauge how much space you're going to need, double check it. So mark the openings for your legs. Generally, the leg notches that are on the bottom of the front body panel are just the right distance apart, and you can use those as a guide. So where you see the yellow pins, between those, each yellow pin is going to be open, so that's open there. You're going to sew around until you get to the back opening for turning and stuffing. Sew, leave the leg open, and then finish that off. And again, just like you did with the armholes, back stitch where you start and stop your stitch to secure the hole to give it that extra strength there. So this is what the bottom looks like. You have your stitch here, your leg opening, your stitch all the way around until you have your opening for turning and stuffing, and then you stitch to the leg opening. Double check your seams and restitch any that you might need to. You can turn it right side out. And you have your holes for your arms and the holes for your legs. Now we're going to prepare the head to be able to add the neck joint. So you've sewn your full front face panel, and you've sewn your back head panel or panels together to create it, but I made a mistake. This should be open here in the back so that you can turn and stuff your face or head. So the seam ripper, which makes an appearance at every project, pull out and just get a hole big enough to be able to turn and stuff the face and head. And of course fit the neck joint into. Okay, so now we have a hole in the back of the head like we should. You're going to make sure you reinforce the stitching on either side of that hole with a back stitch. Okay, now we're going to put the head back together with the face. Line up the center piece there, the center seam with the center notch on the gusset. And then continue aligning the edges and pinning around the face, leaving the opening at the neck. Something like this. You're going to sew all around here and leave the neck open, and of course the opening in the back of the head. Okay, so now you have the head. Double check your stitches, make sure you caught all the fabric. Okay, now we're going to sew the circle for the neck joint. Make sure you've got your dot marked for where we're going to have to insert the neck joint later. So the circle is going to go into the bottom of the neck, just as it did at the top of the body at the neck. So align your side seams, align your edges, pin in place, and we're going to sew all the way around. And pins are your friend. Use lots of them. Okay, so we're going to sew around there with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Adjusting and moving the face and head out of the way, the fabric out of the way as you sew, so you don't sew any wrinkles into your face. And of course, Minky doesn't need to have the curves clipped for these. If you're using something more stiff such as cotton, you will want to clip the curves all the way around. But make sure your stitch has caught all the fabric. Go over any spots that you may have slipped. And turn your head right side out. Alright, now to add the neck joint, you're going to have one piece that has a shank on it, and this is a 55mm neck joint. Then you're going to have a larger piece that's the same diameter plus a washer for the other. So the one that has a shank on it goes inside the head. So make a hole where it's marked, which should be right in the center of that circle. You can use an awl to make the hole. You can snip it slightly bigger with scissors, or you can even make the hole with scissors alone, making kind of a cross cut. Just be careful not to cut it too big. Insert the shank into the hole so the shank is sticking to the outside of the head and the circle part of the joint is on the inside of the head. Okay, so now for the body, you need to create the same hole in that top circle piece at the neck. Get the headpiece that has the shank sticking out and insert the shank into the hole on the neck piece on the body. Then make sure you have all the fabric kind of pushed out of the way so you don't catch fabric in there and end up not getting it pushed on as tight as it needs to be. So take your large flat circle with the hole in the middle. That's the same size as the one with the shank. Work that in there. Again, make sure you don't have fabric stuck underneath it that's not supposed to be there. Get it as flat up against that as you can. And then you're going to have the washer. One side of the washer's got a little top on it and the other side is pretty much flat. The flat side is what's going to go down against the joint. And this can be kind of tough to get snapped into place. Just push hard. You can get a tool if you need something to help you push that on there. Make sure you snap it all the way. I found with these joints they're very good and firm, but they are kind of tough to put on, and each joint will be different depending on what you find. But just make sure that it's completely tight as you can get it. Okay, so this is a 3/8 inch lock joint armature. You could use wire if you'd like. You can use a larger armature if you really want to. This is what I found works best. And you can break it with your hand by folding it in half and squeezing really hard. However, if you need to make it longer again, you cannot put the pieces back together without a special tool. So be very careful and break it where you want it to start with. And when you're determining the length that you need to look at the length of each arm and then the length to go through the body. And that's the length of each arm or leg as well. It's better to have it a little too long that you can kind of pull into the body than to have it too short. Insert with the tapered end because it'll just go in a little easier through the stuffing than using the more blunt end where it broke off. So go through the hole or find the hole hidden there in the fur somewhere. And look at the joint, it's working beautifully. Okay, so insert the armature into one armhole, move it around, and when you stuff this, I stuffed the head full to a tight firmness and stitched up the back. And then I stuffed the body to a medium to tight firmness, but I left the back open so that I can go inside, pull the armature into the body, and adjust it how I need to. So you're going to want to have the sloth stuffed, or animal stuffed, before you insert the armature, but leave that hole open in the back. Okay, so you can double check it, see how it's going to fit. Make sure it's long enough or not too long. So just check both arms together. All right, we're good to go. I like this length. It works well. Now I'm going to add the armature in for the legs in the same manner. Try to get them even on both sides. Again, that hole is open in the back, so I can reach in, adjust the armature from the inside if I need to. So I'm going to check this for the legs, and I took my armature so that it bent up into the foot. The armature did not end at the heel. Okay, so both of those seem even. I like the length. You can choose to wrap your armature, or you can just stuff around it with polyfill. I like to wrap it because it just keeps that over the armature and kind of adds some padding to it. So I got some batting, and I made the batting just a little bit longer than the armature so that I could fold some of it over. And I made it so that I could wrap it around the armature about twice. It's a matter of preference, but you also want to make sure you're going to be able to slide the arm over the batting. And since the opening to the arm is smaller than the end of the arm, you need to keep that in mind. You can trim away as needed. And then to start with, kind of get that whole wrapping going, I took out some excess that was there in the end so I'd be able to slide the arm over top of it. Then I secured it with some thread, just wrapping it around, tying a little knot just to get it started. And the thread I used is just the thread I sew with. And I just wrapped it around several times and tied another knot. Checked it to make sure I was going to be able to slide the arm over the top, and then I continued wrapping the rest of the batting around the armature, getting it tucked in. And just wrapping thread around it to pull it in, keep it tight. It gives padding to the armature, and it's going to stay in place with the thread that I've put on it. It takes some extra time to wrap the armature in batting, but I think that it's worth it. Again, you can make your own choice. I did make one without wrapping the armature and batting, and it really is just fine. You can just feel the armature a little bit more when you squish the arms and legs, whereas with the batting, it's got a little softer feel to it. And you can see I'm using straight pins every now and then just to kind of hold the batting in place while I start getting the wrapping going of the thread. And then of course the thread holds it in place. You tie a knot when you're finished wrapping the thread. And it should look something like this when it's all wrapped up. It's a little softer, it still moves very easily, it's not bunched, and it's going to be a little softer under that arm. We're going to do the same thing on the legs and the other arm. Okay, so we have both arms and both legs wrapped in batting. And now it's time to slide the arms in place. These arms don't have claws because I'm going to be adding those later if you're using this method for the sloth. Just want to mention that. All right, so we have the opening in the side, which is for stuffing and turning. But you want to make sure that you slide the arm on through the very top opening that's going to connect to the body. So you're going to want to pull it up to the very top. We're going to ladder stitch it. Make sure you have your opening there for stuffing, which we'll do in just a little bit. And double check how your armature fits the arm. But make sure your arm is positioned how you would like it, as far as the orientation on the body, where you're attaching it to the fabric. So use a ladder stitch. You're going to tuck under about a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the arm as you attach it to the body. And because you're hand stitching this arm, I would recommend going around it at least twice with a good ladder stitch. Tie your knot when you're finished. Insert your needle at the knot and pull it away about 1 inch from that and trim the thread so it's all tucked into the body. So once you've sewn on your arm, you can sew them all on and then get back to stuffing, or do that one at a time, whatever works for you. Then you're going to stuff your arms. And for the Pudgy Plushies, I like to stuff the end of the arm or foot fairly firmly and then ease up on the stuffing as it gets lighter up toward the top of the arm or leg. So it's more squishy toward the middle and top. And that will also allow for a little bit better movement so the arm isn't too firmly stuffed, to be able to get some good movement with this armature in there. Use a ladder stitch and close up the stuffing, or the hole, I'm sorry, where you stuffed it. And if you need a tutorial on ladder stitching, there is one on my website, and there's actually quite a lot of them on the internet in general, so you can do a search for them and find a really good tutorial that shows up close ladder stitching and kind of walks you through that. And when you're using faux fur, the long Luxe Cuddle from Shannon Fabrics or other Minky, make sure you pick the seams and kind of pull that fabric out of the seams. It really gives a nice finished touch. So you can check the movement, make sure you're happy with it, and then move on to the other arm and the 2 legs and get them all stuffed and finished. Okay, you're all done, and you should have an animated sloth or other animal if you chose to apply it to a different animal. And I would love to see how it turned out. You can share that with me on email. Information is below this video. And you can also share it with everybody else in my Facebook group, the Rustic Horseshoe Daisies. It's a wonderful group of people and they would love to see it too, and you can find a link for that below as well. Hope you'll join me here on YouTube as I slowly but surely get some more videos put out and add content here that can hopefully help you make some wonderful plushies and learn some great techniques. Stay creative and happy sewing!